Hi there, this is Brittany from By Brittany Goldwyn. I post videos about plants and projects, and today we are talking about 7 beginner-friendly houseplants that you probably haven't heard of. And if you have heard of them, you may not have them in your collection. So we are not going to be talking about spider plants, snake plants. Let's see, what else is always super common? Heartleaf philodendron, cast iron plants, peace lilies. All of those are great plants, nothing against them. I have and love many of them, but it's always the same plants, right? So today we're going to be talking about some that I think are a little bit more unique that you may want to consider adding to your collection. All right, we're going to start off strong here with what is one of my largest houseplants in my collection and is also a hanging plant, the Epiphyllum oxypetalum. So this is also referred to more commonly as a queen of the night. We also see this one referred to a lot as a night blooming cirrus cactus. So it has so many names: Dutchman's pipe, tropical cactus. The thing to remember is that it is an epiphyllum and it has the same care needs as a succulent or cactus would. So I let the soil dry out nearly completely before watering it again. I give it bright indirect light and it grows like crazy. Now, another cool thing about this plant is, in addition to its super crazy growth habit, I generally just let these stems go kind of wild. This is a night blooming cactus, which is why it's called a queen of the night. So it will bud up randomly for me throughout the year with maybe like 10 to 20 buds depending. And the buds will form right around dusk, and then they will start to open between like 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. in my experience. And then they open these beautiful bright white flowers that last only one night. By the morning, the next morning, they're already starting to close up and wilt, and it's just a really cool thing to see. And they bloom at night because they are pollinated by moths and bats and whatnot in their natural habitat. But they make great and very forgiving house plants, especially because of their low water needs. I would just recommend bright indirect light for this one, a chunky, well-draining soil, and letting the soil dry out almost completely before watering it again. Now this next one I have had for quite a few years. I have trimmed it quite a few times, and I had to Google the pronunciation of its scientific name quite a few times. I'll probably still butcher it. It is the Xerosicyos danguyi, otherwise known as the silver dollar succulent vine. So this one can be climbing or vining. If you look closely on here, you will see that they have these little tendrils that come out that are meant to help them climb. And then the leaves on this one are quite succulent. It is a succulent, and it's just a really unique looking plant. I'll take this out. I have it in a pretty small pot right now, actually, for how large it's gotten. And despite this one being a lover of well-draining soil and lots of bright light, even some bright direct light has been fine for this one. It's really only grows for me in the winter. So it's the middle of winter right now, and I will find that late fall and winter, this one will really start shooting out new growth. So you can see right here, this is where I originally cut this plant to do a couple propagations. So this whole stem right here is new. And these are, the tendrils are grabbing onto one of my Hoyas there. So this one is just a really cool plant to have on the top of a shelf because it can kind of drape out in a really cool way. I've seen people run them along trellises or run them along walls, which looks very, very cool as well. Now this next plant is a plant that you probably have heard of, at least you've heard of a type of it, but you may not have one in your collection yet if you are just getting started with houseplants. And that is the Epipremnum aureum marble queen, or marble queen pothos, one of which is hanging behind me. Actually, I have this one up on a shelf now so that I could put a drainage saucer under it. And then I've got the vines just vining along some command hooks here, which is just so pretty. I love it. I've taken down one of my other marble queens from elsewhere in my house to show you guys how big and bushy and trailing these get. So you've probably heard of pothos, but if you're interested in getting started with some variegated plants, I do recommend the marble queen pothos as a really good beginner variegated plant because it honestly does not need much to maintain its variegation. This plant, as you can see, is very highly variegated, has some really nice color to it, and I have this in our kitchen and dining area, which has no windows at all. The only light it gets is from the artificial lighting, of course, from the lamps in the room, and also from any residual lighting from the windows, which are pretty far away from where they are. So this has still done really, really well. It has grown like a weed, and it has maintained its variegation in less than optimal light levels. I would recommend for this one shooting for bright indirect light to get the best variegation, but knowing that if you have a spot in your house where you don't have the best light, but you want something really lovely, this would be a good choice for that spot. I've now had this one in its spot for 3 years, and it has shown no signs of giving out on me. And the next one we're talking about, you saw a peek of behind me there with the Marble Queen Pothos. It is this gorgeous Philodendron giganteum. Now, I actually have a care video all about this plant because, I mean, this one is just, it is such a striking plant. You do have to have a lot of room for this one. As you can see, it is a climber, but it also spreads quite a lot. I've pruned this one a number of times. Obviously, if you get a more juvenile plant, you will have a while to go before you have to worry about getting a ton of space for it. But I find that the Philodendron giganteum gives all the drama and all the tropical feel that elephant ear plants give, so alocasia type plants, without having the drama of caring for elephant ears indoors. I have sworn off caring for elephant ears indoors. It's just too dry in my house, and I don't want to deal with adding all the extra humidity. But this one does, it's more than happy in a room with average humidity. I have no humidifier near it. I don't mist it. I don't really do anything, and it continues to pop out these gorgeous new leaves even throughout the winter. Now, despite being in a location that has a pretty good variety as far as houseplant selection goes, I did have to order this one online. I don't see it locally a ton. I ordered it off of, I think, Etsy many years ago. It was probably about 1/4 the size of what it is now. So it was quite large when I got it, but I've also pruned it a lot since I've had it either to propagate or just to control its size. So this one is a really great dramatic plant if you have a spot with great bright indirect light to put it in. Now, this next one does kind of feel like I've gathered all of my Hoya Carnosas together for some weird family photo here, but I wanted to show all of the different varieties of Hoya Carnosa I have for this roundup, because Hoya Carnosa, yes, I did cheat a little bit for this one. The next one is Hoya Carnosa, but there are lots of different types of Hoya Carnosa that you can consider adding to your collection. Some of my favorites I have here. This is a Hoya Carnosa Crimson Queen. Lots of great variegation on this one. And then there's also a Hoya Carnosa Crimson Princess. And both the Queen and the Princess you can generally find pretty easily either in big box garden centers or local nurseries. I'm constantly taking cuttings from these. Getting caught on everything, they're so long. Constantly taking cuttings from these and bringing them to our local plant swap to share the Hoya love. This is another one that has really grown like crazy for me over the years. This is a Hoya Carnosa Chelsea, and this one has a slightly more dimpled leaf than the regular Hoya Carnosa that all of these plants come from have. And then what may be my favorite plant of all time currently is the Hoya Carnosa compacta, or the rope plant. You'll often hear this called a Hoya rope plant or just a rope plant because the leaves just look kind of like a long knotted up rope. I have 3 of these. This is the only plant in my collection that I have broken my self-imposed rule of only having 1 of each type of plant because I love them so much. I have a giant one I'll show you in a second. And then there's also a variegated version of the Hoya Carnosa compacta, which grows much slower and does need a little bit more light because of its variegation, but it is really, really lovely. So all of the Hoya Carnosas do need bright indirect light. They will grow best in bright indirect light, so I have them all here in my sunroom. And then any of the variegated Hoya carnosas are going to need just a little bit more light because of the variegation in those leaves. The variegation that you see, so the spots on the leaves that are pink or white, they do not have chlorophyll in them. So they are contributing nothing to the plant. They're not helping the plant photosynthesize. They just look really pretty, which is why we love them. So if you have varieties like maybe the Hoya Carnosa Chelsea that don't have any variegation, these may be better candidates for a spot if it has a little bit lower light levels, but I would not call these plants lower light plants. This right here is my big Hoya Carnosa compacta. This one right here is probably my favorite plant in my whole collection. And I should also say that Hoya carnosas, all different types of Hoya carnosas, get these really beautiful wax looking flowers, which is actually why this plant can be referred to as a wax plant. Not only is the foliage thick and has a shiny kind of waxy looking finish on it, but the flowers are so perfect that they almost look fake, like a wax flower. None of my Hoyas are currently in bloom, but I will throw up some footage of what they look like here so that you can hopefully be enticed to add one of these to your collection. They do take a couple of years to mature, to get to the point of flowering, and I also have a video on here all about encouraging your Hoya plants to flower, because I have had many Hoyas flower. It's one of the reasons why I love Hoyas so much. So definitely check that out if you're interested in Hoya flowering. Now, if the Hoya Carnosa compacta is my favorite plant in my collection, the next one would probably have to be my second favorite, and that is the Disocactus anguliger. This one you might also see referred to as an epiphyllum. It used to be classified as an epiphyllum, but you know, botanists are always changing how they classify things. The easiest thing to call it though is a rickrack or a fishbone cactus. So this actually, the whole show on this one is its stems. So these are not leaves, these are all stems. They have a really cool, deeply lobed fishbone type look to them, and they grow kind of crazy, which I really love too. I love some crazy growing plants that just kind of go wild on their own. This is another tropical cactus. And much like the Epiphyllum Queen of the Night I did for the first plant, this one also throws out night blooms. So there are actually two types of fishbone and rickrack cactuses that you will encounter. One is this type, which has white flowers, and another type is a little bit different. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I will throw it up here in text, but that one has pink flowers, and my mom has that version. I like this version a little bit better because it grows a little bit more up and out. It's a little crazier, whereas hers is a little bit more of a drapey growth pattern. But this one just makes a really great table plant because it just kind of looks like Sideshow Bob. It's really cool. This one's also very, very easy to propagate, and you can generally find this one in the spring and summer at big box garden centers for pretty good prices. And the last plant we have here for our beginner-friendly unique plants is the Selenicereus chrysocardium, which I probably butchered, but I more often refer to this one as the fern leaf cactus. Now, if you are like I am, you probably love the lush look of ferns, but unfortunately, my cat also loves the lush look of ferns. People always ask me, how do you have plants with cats? And the answer is there are certain plants I just cannot have. My cat, Henry, he loves munching on anything that's like fern-like, really leafy greens. He will just destroy them. So I can't have any sort of ferns in the house. Also, ferns are really hard for me to keep alive and happy in my super dry house without adding any sort of extra humidity. Cue the fern leaf cactus. This one has a really striking tropical lush look, but since it's got these succulent stems, it's actually very, very easy to take care of and really thrives in dry air, actually. I've got it in a spot that's pretty dry. It's about 30% humidity right now, and it gets very bright indirect light. Now, this is a tropical cactus, so it will definitely appreciate more humidity if you can give it more humidity. This might be a really good candidate for summering outside on a shaded patio, but it is perfectly happy to grow in an area that has low humidity. And that's one of the key things that I think makes a houseplant very easy to care for and very beginner friendly. It just takes one of the variables out that you have to worry about. And that about wraps up my list of my 7 recommended easy plants that are also a little bit unique for newer plant parents. If you guys like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you'll see my new videos. It really does help a lot in having my content be shown to more people. And if you have any thoughts on any of these plants or you're adding any of them to your wish list, be sure to let me know and make any suggestions for other unique plants you recommend for beginners in the comments. Until next time, happy planting!